We got Jim Lampley right here on the PorterWay Podcast with us. And you got us, Jim?
I'm here.
There he is. How are you doing, sir?
Well, now that I have managed the electronic minefield one more time to establish an audible link to a part of the universe in which I really want to be, I'm elated. And it's always an upset.
Yes, sir.
I, as one of the most cyber-challenged people you will ever meet, and which is why that's why God made engineers, so that people could set me up in such a way that I can be heard. And now my wife is a better engineer than I am. But on we go. Here I am.
Yes, sir. Listen, y'all hear that, right?
Yeah.
Y'all don't care?
Of course.
If we good, then we good. All right, here we go. Jim, a week away from work.
Yeah.
A week removed from work. Work that you hadn't done in quite some time. Did you go back and listen to yourself? How did you feel in the moment? Kind of just take us through an experience that you hadn't had in quite some time.
Well, as you know, I am simultaneously returning to work as I did at Ringside in Times Square, and then also promoting my recently published autobiography. So about 10 minutes after the last fight, if you want to call it that, ended in Times Square, I was back on the book tour and flew to Los Angeles and did a terrific appearance at Freddie Roach's Wild Card Gym. And before that, a couple of terrific appearances in San Diego. So I've been, back across the USA, all over the map, back from the subject of the boxing matches in Times Square to the subject of my book. And you say 8-9 days ago, yeah, I get that. Feels like a month or something like that since I finished doing that work in Times Square. It was called Fight Again, obviously. We all, Tarver, Coppinger, myself, we all would have wished that the combat was more interesting, that in fact it was combat. And it turned out to be a truly underwhelming night of fights in Times Square. And I can't possibly tell you why that turned out to be the case in every single one of the fights, but that was it.
I got one more. This one just came to me, and I'll let you guys go. When you watch a fight, are you able to see what guys are thinking, what they're feeling in the midst of what was going on at Times Square? At any point, were you able to look at those guys and kind of think maybe they feel this way, maybe they're thinking this? Could you figure it out at all? What caused it to be? Every single fight was very, for the sake of words, uneventful.
It was safer for me to rely particularly on Antonio to try to interpret what was going on there. I was back calling fights. Let's be honest. I was back calling fights for the first time in 6 years. So you can't just step into the chair and assume, okay, I'm going to have all the same filters. I'm going to have all the same base of knowledge. I'm going to be just as perceptive and knowledgeable about this as I was the last time I did it 6 years ago. I didn't want to take that for granted in any way. I wanted to be as respectful as I could of what was going on in the ring. So to a greater degree for Tarver and even Coppinger than for me, the responsibility was there to take the fighters to task for refusing to perform for whatever reason they refused to perform. And it was, to watch Haney skirting the ring with his back to the rope, circling, to watch Ryan Garcia fizzle the way Ryan did in that fight, even to watch Teofimo taking a safe, easy win, which was certainly within his rights and within his capability, but which did not entertain. All of those things were kind of a setback for people who might have wanted to see real entertainment in Times Square that night.
Jim, we know what's
interesting. We're nodding here.
Jim, what's interesting to the point of what you and Sean are talking about, the fights not delivering and you being honest about what you're seeing, because that's kind of a lost art in commentating today. A lot of commentators kind of turn into the extension of the promoter, and they're always, regardless of the action in the ring, trying to sell the audience that what you're seeing is good. What you're seeing is worth. They're worried that if they are too honest about something not being good, that people will tune out. Even in the NBA right now, Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal inside the NBA, they're having their final season on the air, and there's a lot of people critical that they're too critical of the product right now, the NBA. But I don't know. I think it was refreshing for you to not tell the audience that this chicken shit is chicken salad. Telling them what's really happening. Do you think there's value in that? And what do you think of a lot of commentators kind of drifting away from being critical, even when it's worthy of being critical of the fight?
One man put me back in that chair, and his name is Turki Al-Sheikh. I owed my return to boxing blow by blow mostly to Turki Al-Sheikh. There are other people in the organization who I think are also supportive. I have not had enough conversations or time sitting down with Turki Al-Sheikh to know exactly what his particular attitude is or is going to be toward fighters who don't perform on the cards for which he's paying a lot of money. But I just sort of took it for granted that I could be me. He said he wanted me, and me in the past has been a guy who has tried to be as honest as he can be with viewers about what he's seeing. A long time ago, when I was first beginning what became the greatest friendship of my adult life with Emanuel Stewart, I asked Emanuel in an early conversation, I said, why are we so naturally copacetic? Why is it that we get along so easily when we've barely known each other in the past? And he said, Jim, real knows real. And I've always kept that in my head as a piece of advice from Emanuel that can help to guide me through the whole landscape of boxing. Real knows real. And what real knows real means in this instance is if you know anything at all about boxing and you've been around the sport before and you understand what it is to really perform in such a way as to give the audience everything it wants, you know that wasn't it. And you can't hide from that. So, again, I was me. I said the things that I wanted to say. I tried to paint the picture exactly the way it is. I hope, for the sake of my future employment prospects, that Turki Al-Sheikh will see it exactly the right way. I didn't ask him that night. I didn't have a chance to do so, but I was there to work for him because he was the person who put me in that chair.
Here it is.
And Mr. Lampley, you've been around some of the biggest fights. And in the stadium, you can feel the energy at night when the main event's coming. Sometimes once the co-main is on, it's like it's build up. It's probably because he's my friend, but the most intense I've been is Spence Porter because I felt the roof was about to go off the arena. Did you feel any energy that night leading into those fights?
I mean, unfortunately, I think there were people there who really wanted for the card to take off, but once the fighters began doing what they were doing in the ring, there was very little to sink your teeth into. And again, I've mentioned the stars here who fizzled because of the way Ryan fought in the main event. Rolly Romero, generally seen as a go-forward attacking fighter, was able to stand back and pose and get an easy win. And because of the way Teofimo fought, he got an easy win too, but he got it without doing anything that delivered fireworks or crowd-pleasing action. It just seemed to be an unfortunate night of matchups in which fighters stood in front of each other and didn't perform in the way that we would have expected them based on their past histories to perform. I mean, if I'm wrong about that, let me know, but that was the way I felt about it.
No, you're not wrong about that at all. But let's look to the future a little bit. I know that upon coming back, you were looking forward to a big explosion in New York Times Square. That didn't happen, but do we get Jim Lampley back for some more commentary ringside?
Well, I'm not the one who decides that, and I was back because people who matter understood and realized practically without even asking me, do you want to come back and call fights? Do you want to go back to doing what you've done? And the answer obviously was yes. I'm a boxing blow by blow guy. I don't have another profession at this point beyond that. Maybe book writing. I wrote the one book I could write, and now it's out there and I'm selling it. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to keep working, it's going to be as a fight caller, as a ringside blow by blow guy. So that's what I wanted to do. And I certainly hope that regardless of what happened in Times Square, that I'm invited back to do it again. I'm not afraid to say that. If that doesn't happen, well, the clock is running and everybody runs out of time at some point or another. So it's more a matter of, do I want to work than if I need to work? And the answer is I want to work because I love to come to boxing matches. I love to talk about them. I love to be with the people. I love to rub shoulders with Shawn Porter and all of his friends. And that's part of the game for me.
Jim, before you get out of here, man, I hope you are the blow-by-blow guy come September for Canelo versus Crawford. You were the blow-by-blow guy for Mayweather-Pacquiao. That fight, Mayweather-Pacquiao, made a lot of money. It didn't quite deliver the fight people were hoping for. Do you think something similar happens with Canelo-Crawford, or no, that fight actually delivers what people are looking for?
I think they are both much more naturally inclined toward combat than one of the participants was in Mayweather versus Pacquiao. And the one who was less inclined toward face-to-face combat in Mayweather-Pacquiao was the one who was technically skilled in such a way that he could control the action. Let's face it, if Floyd wanted all the air out of the balloon, he was the best at removing all the air from the balloon. If he wanted a low-action fight that he could manage and walk to an easy boxing victory, he could do that against virtually any opponent. That was a part of his vast skill set. So for years, people would come up to me on the streets, grab me in the hotel casino, and say to me in breathless tones, when am I going to see Mayweather versus Pacquiao? And I would say, what is it that you think you're going to see? Why are you so excited about that? Because I know what you're going to see, and it isn't going to be fireworks. It's going to be a spectacularly skilled performance on the part of the person who can limit the fireworks. And you cannot blame him for that, because regardless of what you pay, because it's his job to win the fights. And that's a huge part of how he wins the fights he wants to win. So I knew that Floyd would nullify Manny the way he did. And he did exactly that, what I expected him to do that night. And it was just surprising to me how many fans thought, as some other people think, that if you put two great fighters in the ring with each other, that's naturally going to be a great fight. That isn't the case at all. Styles make fights. And if you put two counterpunchers in the ring together, there's every chance that they're going to stand at each other and look at each other and pose. So somebody has to make a fire in order for there to be a fight. Put an attacker against a counterpuncher, put in two attackers, can't miss. That's how you get Gaddy Ward or Barrera Morales. But an attacker against a counterpuncher, really interesting fight. Let's see who gets the better of it. Two counterpunchers against each other, as we saw too many times recently, they don't make a fight. They look at each other and wait for a cue. So, you have to work with people who know how to make fights and know how to put the right kind of combustion into the ring. And sometimes, people wait years and years and years to see two-star fighters in the ring together, and they don't get what they want. I'm very happy that Crawford is going to fight Canelo, because even if I have some doubts and misgivings about the size matchup, it is two action fighters who like to fight aggressively at times, not all the times, going against each other, and we'll see who can open the other person's tuna can, so to speak.
Jim, before you get out of here, why don't you plug your book? Tell everybody the name of your book and where we can find it. The
book is called It Happened. The author is Jim Lampley. The most poignant element of the book is that the title came from my call of George Foreman's win over Michael Moorer at age 45. The prologue, the first thing you read in the book, is the 19-year-old me watching the 19-year-old Foreman win his gold medal in Mexico City. The blurb that he wrote that's on the back cover may well have been one of his last public acts, and he died 2 weeks before the book was published. So it's impossible for me to think about my book, It Happened, without thinking about George and how much I miss him. And the good news is that I'm not weeping right now, which I have done on some other occasions since he died, because I did not have any foreknowledge or realization that he was on the verge of that or headed in that direction. And I'm still very deeply hurt and disturbed by his departure.
I know you are, Jim. So I'm sure most of the boxing world. One more thing before you get out of here. Wait a minute. Tell us where we can find the book at.
So you can get the book on Barnes & Noble online. You can get the book on Amazon online. You can get it at your neighborhood bookstore, particularly if it's an independent bookstore. Don't walk into Barnes & Noble expecting to see a big stack of Jim Lampley, It Happened. You might find 2 or 3, but there are really great independent bookstores who recognize the importance of boxing that might have 30 or 40 of them. But at the end of the day, not difficult to go online, Google Jim Lampley, It Happened, and find a way to buy a copy. I wish I could send a complimentary copy to everybody in the world, but I'm sure every author thinks that.
One more thing, Jim, before you get out of here. Give us one of your storyteller. I love you. Give us one of your favorite boxing ringside stories.
One of my favorite boxing ringside stories. Well, there are a lot of great stories in the book, and the best story probably relates to the fact that I was first assigned to boxing at ABC Sports by an incoming new executive in charge of the sports division who wanted to get rid of me, and he thought that there was a style difference between me and the boxing ring, and that if he assigned me to boxing, he would make me uncomfortable in such a way that I would walk away from my contract and leave ABC Sports. He did not realize that the very first event my mother had ever sat me down to watch after my father died when I was 5 years old was Sugar Ray Robinson versus Bobo Olson for the middleweight championship on Gillette Friday Night Fights when I was 6 years old. And I began learning about boxing. But when he assigned me to boxing at ABC Sports to get rid of me, the other thing he didn't realize was that the division had just signed a get acquainted, look-see contract with a 19-year-old heavyweight from upstate New York, whose name was Mike Tyson. So the very first event that I ever called in boxing on network television was Mike Tyson versus Jesse Ferguson in Glens Falls, New York. And Sean, you'll remember, that's the famous, I wanted to drive his nose bone into his fight brain, when Mike absolutely obliterated Jesse's nose in the middle of the ring in the 5th round with an uppercut, and there was blood all over the ring. And my expert commentator, Alex Wallow, stepped into the ring to do the post-fight interview and said, "Mike, tell me about the uppercut." And Mike said, "Katamata taught me that the purpose of the uppercut to drive the opponent's nose bone into his brain. I wanted to drive his nose bone into his brain." And I was standing at ringside thinking, oh my God, this kid is not only going to be the greatest quote machine in boxing, he's going to be the greatest quote machine in sports.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, they all came rolling out. Boxing is a hurt business. Everybody's got a plan until you hit them. All the quotes that, to be fair, Customato had taught him. But he knew how to recycle them. He knew how to make them come off the page. He did, in fact, become the #1 quote machine in sports. And that was what I was treated to by an executive who wanted to get rid of me. I did eventually leave ABC, but that executive had written me a ticket to HBO, and I'm grateful to them today.
Yeah.
Jim, I got it. That Bobo Olson fight, wasn't that when Ray Robinson landed the perfect punch, the check left hook to knock Bobo Olson out?
Absolutely, but I didn't know what a check left hook was in those days. I had to wait for my ABC expert commentator, Alex Wallow, to teach me technical things like that. I used to go up to his apartment on Fifth Avenue and sit me down for 2 or 3 hours at a time to show me all the things I didn't know about boxing. Watch the way the body puncher holds his opponent's arm on the side away from the referee so that he can land body punches while the referee doesn't see that he's obstructing the defense, et cetera, et cetera. All those kinds of things Alex Wallow taught me and made me at least a reasonably competent play-by-play guy at the beginning. And then I got to call fights for 30 years. That's how you get good.
Yeah.
You got to have a lot of repetitions to get good.
Yeah.
Well, he knew the check left hook by the time Mayweather knocked out Hatton. He called that. So yeah.
Listen, Jim, we love you.
Floyd had a lot of craft that mimicked some of the things that Sugar Ray did. So does Terrence. And Terrence is psychologically a latter-day Sugar Ray Robinson. He has the same kind of capacity to be charming and then in the next 30 seconds to turn on his fire. And that, I think, is part of what he's going to take into the ring against Canelo.
Ooh. Jim, you're the best. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you very much, Sean.
Wow.
Love you guys. Love talking to you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.